Welcome everybody and to the Successful Bookkeeper Summit, and I'm Ron Baker, and this session is Time's Up, the subscription business model. I'm here with my co-host and colleague, Ed Kless. Ed, how's it going?
Going great, Ron. Looking forward to talking about this.
Yeah, this is a great topic. You and I have been talking about the subscription business model since for about 4.5 years now, so we've done a lot of shows on it. Folks, we're really excited about this model. It's very customer-centric. It literally puts the customer at the center of your firm, which is, I think, really important because this is a relationship business. We always say how important the relationship is. And yet, when you look at our traditional business model, we're monetizing services. We're not really focused on the relationship, not from a business model context. So this aligns the business model with what we say our purpose is, which is to help people and put the relationship first. So it kind of started out by asking a question, what would happen if Walt Disney entered the accounting space? They started bookkeeping firms or accounting firms, whatever. And we've asked audiences around the world this question, and you always kind of get nervous. Are they thinking about it type questions? It's like, no, it's just a thought experiment. But how would it be different? How would they approach a bookkeeping firm or an accounting firm? And I think we'd all have to agree they would up they would up the customer experience. They would bring innovation to it. They'd probably make the interactions a lot easier for the customer, and they wouldn't view it as a commodity, and they certainly wouldn't price it cheaply. Now, I realize Disney has a world-class brand and all of that, but because I think what drives your pricing power is the customer experience, and constantly delivering, even unexpected value, but certainly ever increasing value to the customer is what really gives you pricing power. And if you look at kind of the history of business models, we kind of go through this diffusion cycle. Like when we were moving, Ed, from hourly billing to value pricing, we hit that 2.5% of innovators pretty quick, but it took a ton of time to get to the early adopters. And now I would say we're in the early majority. And now doesn't it feel like we're sliding back to the innovators with this model?
Most definitely. Yeah, we are.
And, if we're not innovating, folks, from a business model context, if we're not sliding back to the left side, at least every now and then that just means 84% of us are copying one another. And if you go to the market with a common service offering, well, then you're going to command common pricing. But if you go into the market with an uncommon service, well, then you're going to command uncommon pricing. And that's another advantage that we see that this business model brings to us. It allows us to really up our game, really up the customer experience, and offer them something that's frictionless, that's convenient, that provides them with peace of mind. And it also removes the cognitive load of pricing. Once they decide to subscribe to your firm, even become a member, the pricing decision is over. So they're not tying specific services or a specific scope of work to your pricing. And you don't have to sit down with them every year like you do with value pricing and come up with a new agreement. That cognitive load is removed, which is fantastic because then you're not forcing the customer to reevaluate the entire relationship. Now, this is not to say that you can't raise your prices under subscription. Of course you can. It's not to say that you can't change your pricing under subscription. Of course you can. Your pricing is never done under any business model. You're constantly experimenting and tinkering with it. But I just love the fact that this removes that cognitive load from the customer, and it kind of goes to what you always say about a monthly payment. It becomes a habit, and they don't think about it anymore.
Yeah, that's correct. I will say one thing about this adoption is that, I don't know about you, Ron, but I'm seeing that the adoption of the subscription model is happening a lot quicker than the adoption of value pricing did. You mentioned that, yes, we got through the 2.5% innovators, and then it was really hard to cross the chasm, where this is from the Jeffrey Moore's book. And the challenge that I think we saw with value pricing, we're not seeing as much resistance from the folks who are adopting subscription. So maybe it's, I don't know if it's market timing. I don't know if it's the people who are in the market are just more into innovation, more willing to do that. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm definitely seeing that.
Me too. And I think part of it too is subscription. We've all got more used to it, and we no longer carry the baggage that subscription used to, like the Columbia Record House or whatever that you could never get out of, that I'm probably still being billed for. Those days are gone. I mean, now we're subscribing to Netflix and Disney. We can cancel any time. I mean, heck, Netflix had to cancel subscribers that weren't using it, which, from a cost accounting perspective is your favorite customer, somebody who pays you every month, but never does anything. And Netflix said, no, that's not the purpose. If you're paying, we need to provide you value. So this model is really, really focused on the customer and building that lifelong relationship. So the subscription economy, let's just give you some context on this. It's projected to be $1.5 trillion by 2025. And just for context, it's about 650 billion as of 2020. It has experienced 17.5% growth on a 10-year compound annual growth rate compared to 3.8% for the S&P 500. If you look out there, most unicorns, startups and unicorns, over $1 billion in valuation are based on the subscription business model. Subscription started in your world, Ed, software as a service, and now it's kind of like everything as a service. It grew about 10% during COVID, while non-subscription businesses were actually declining. And their churn rate, which is a concept we're going to introduce to you in the second part of the session today. I'm doing another session on the KPIs. And churn is obviously a big one. That's the amount of customer revenue that you lose. Well, the churn rate in subscription businesses during COVID years actually went down, which means they held on to their customers even in very difficult times. So subscription also gives you a lot of resiliency in the in pandemic times or recessionary times. I mean, Ed, we were watching companies jump on really fast, making adjustments to their payment terms, letting people pause as soon as COVID hit and the lockdowns came, didn't we?
Yes, exactly. And that flipped things around a little bit. But yeah, but I thought that the businesses in general that were doing subscription reacted quite nicely to it.
They really did. They gave their customers the chance to opt out if they could no longer afford it or pause it. Remember that one salon business that said, well, you could donate your subscription payment to your stylist if you wanted. I mean, there was a lot of innovation going on out there. And the subscription model allows you to adjust really, really fast to changing conditions, which obviously COVID was. So the subscription economy is really growing. Now, Teen Zoe is the founder of Zora, and Zora's software company platform that runs subscription businesses. So he's probably the chief proselytizer. In fact, he coined the term, the subscription economy. And he's been running a conference every year called Subscribed. I think it goes back to 2011. So this has been going on now for over a decade. And he says in 5 years, you won't buy anything but subscribe to everything. Now, I have to say, we on our show, we've been trying to keep track of things that you can subscribe to, and the list just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, boats and diapers and homes. You can subscribe to a home where you could live in 40 different countries. You can subscribe to a Porsche. Brunswick, you can subscribe to boats and all sorts of different things. I'm not willing to go this far. This prediction didn't pan out because I think his book came out in 2018. But what we do believe is we believe Ann Janzer, another great author in this space, along with Teen. She wrote the book Subscription Marketing. She said in 5 years, you'll have the option of subscribing to everything, and every business will have to accommodate that fact. So regardless of whether or not you do anything with the information that we're sharing today, you'll probably be confronted at some point with competition in your market, no matter where you are, that is offering the customer a subscription. Now, if they're doing it right, then they've upped their game and they're providing a lot more value. Subscription is not just a financial arrangement. It is not taking an annual price and dividing it by 12. That is not subscription. There is so much more to this business model than just the financial payment terms. Most people we hear, oh, yeah, we do subscription, and it's not subscription when you really dig into it. So I think Ann Janser's more right, but let's face it, subscribing in today's world to things, whether it's a car or home appliances or whatever, is just so much easier than ownership. Ownership is kind of like an albatross. Not only do you have to pick and decide and buy, maybe transport it, have it, repair it, provide maintenance on it, and then what do you do when it's done? Recycling issues and all that. With subscription, it's like, hey, if it breaks, they just send you a new one or bring out a new one. I mean, it tries to make it convenient and save the customer time. To the extent that you can save your customer time, I think this is the new competitive advantage frontier at, is saving customers time and effort.
Yeah. My joke is perhaps we should start having our customers do timesheets so that we can determine how much time we're saving them.
Right. And I would add, just like Joe Pine does in his book, The Experience Economy, we should also track the time the customers spend with us, because just like, we spend time with bands or favorite comedians, then that's having an audience. And boy, that's the ultimate. Maybe we should start using the term audience, because they're actually giving their time to us at that point. And that's really meaningful. And it also strengthens relationships. So Andy Grove, the late founder of Intel, he said disruptive threats come inherently not from new technology, but from new business models. And Ed is also doing a session here at the summit, and he's going to talk about innovation beyond technology. So it's not just technology. It can be psychological innovations. It can just be in how you price your offering, can be a form of innovation, as we saw when we help firms move from hourly billing to value pricing. If you think about Airbnb, if you think about Uber, these are disruptive threats. Now, sure, they're enabled by technology, and I'm not sure we would have had Uber until we got the iPhone, but it wasn't just the technology. It was also all the other things that they did to make taking an Uber so much easier, like the automatic payment. You didn't have to fumble around with your wallet. You knew exactly where the driver was, how long it was going to be, so you didn't have to keep walking out the rain from the bar to see if your cab was around the corner, so all of those things. And when a business model changes, two things happen. One, the pricing method changes, the pricing strategy changes. So we go from buying CDs, and then we buy songs from Apple iTunes for $1 to load onto our iPods at the time. And now I bet most of you subscribe to your music, whether it's Pandora or Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon Prime, whatever. So the pricing strategy changes. And then also the KPIs change, what you measure internally, because a business model creates value in a different way and it captures value with different pricing strategies. Obviously, your KPIs are going to be different. Now, in the part 2 of this, of my presentations, we're going to talk about those KPIs and what they are, how they look, and how they change. Even the accounting, even your profit and loss statement in your firm is going to change if you adopt this model. So if you think about the evolution of business models in our profession, obviously we had hourly billing, which priced the inputs, how much effort, how many hours are we going to put into this? And then we kind of went into this. When I joined the profession in '84, we were in the fixed fee world. I worked at a Big 8 accounting firm. We would give a fixed fee for an audit or even tax work, or even sometimes bundled the two, but it was still based on estimating hours. And then if there were additional work that came up, we would, always do it hourly. So it was kind of a hybrid. And then, of course, when we started teaching value pricing at VeraSage in the '90s, we taught that you priced the customer. So because value is subjective, we were pricing the customer, where fixed fees priced the outputs. The value pricing tried to price the customer, and it didn't look so much at the services. Well, the subscription model is pricing the relationship and the portfolio. And people always ask us, well, what's the difference between pricing the customer and pricing the relationship? And that's probably one of the biggest semantic differences, isn't it, Ed, about this model?
Yeah, it is. It is an important one to think that, I'm not sure which one to emphasize. Honestly, one over the other, because it is the relationship is the individual piece of it, but the portfolio is the risk pool that you're pricing over, and I think both are important to keep in mind. And I'm not quite sure what the relationship is in terms of percentage where you should emphasize. So.
I'm not either. I do know they're both important. And the real point is to align what we're monetizing, with what the customer's paying us for. It's really the revenue model question.
Correct.
And Ed came up with this definition of the subscription business model. We've been playing with this for so long, specifically for professional firms. Subscription model is a periodic recurring payment for frictionless, ever increasing value. So to do subscription, you have to constantly be providing recurring value, just like Amazon Prime does, or Netflix, or Disney Plus. They're constantly dropping new seasons or new shows, whatever. And notice that your price doesn't change because they've disconnected the pricing from the services or the offering that they're dropping upon us, which is fantastic because it reduces that cognitive load. When you see something drop on Amazon or Netflix, even if you don't watch it, you go, oh wow, that's more value because I could watch it at some point in the future. I think it's a really interesting psychology that we don't fully grasp yet, do we, Ed?
No. But what I want you to do here, Ron, is because I know you're going to talk about this in the next session as well when we get to you talk about the metrics. But make the distinction between recurring and reoccurring. I think it's important.
Yeah, this comes from John Warlow. He's another author in the subscription space, and he wrote the book The Automatic Customer. And he makes the distinction because people who buy businesses make the distinction. They will look at your revenue, they will analyze it, and they will say, is this reoccurring revenue, or is it recurring revenue? Recurring revenue subscription, it's either monthly. We know one firm that gets paid weekly, is on a weekly cadence. It could be quarterly. We don't advise going much longer than that. That's going to be recurring revenue because even though they can cancel at any time, that cancel button is prominent on your website, in every email interaction you have with them or any other touch point, can always make it real easy to cancel. But they're going to value that recurring revenue at a higher multiple than they are your reoccurring revenue. Because even though in our world, we have a lot of reoccurring revenue, the annual accounts, if you do tax work, other types of compliance work, that's obviously very reoccurring. However, we also do a lot of one-off projects and things, and it's kind of more like a rash. You don't really know if it's coming back. It's more sporadic, and it's going to command a less sales price when somebody takes some of your revenue and classifies it as reoccurring as opposed to recurring. So the highest multiples we're seeing out there in businesses that sell are recurring revenues, the subscription model. Didn't Adobe Ed just pay for an outfit called Figma? It had $400 million of annual recurring revenue, and Adobe paid $20 billion.
It's only a factor of 50, Ron.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. And what, bookkeeping firms get one times gross revenue. So take from that what you want. But that is a fantastic distinction because recurring revenue, it's just more predictable, especially once you've run your subscription model for a couple years. You get a feel for your churn rate, so you know pretty predictably what your churn rate, how many customers and how much revenue that's going to be, you're going to lose. And you'll also probably be able to do things to mitigate that churn because now it is on your radar screen. It's right in your financials. And it's just a more predictable model. It allows you to plan capacity better. And what you're really doing with subscription is you're building lifetime annuities that have a higher lifetime value than it costs to acquire the customer. And that's what you're really doing. You're paying to acquire these customers that are going to throw off a lifetime value that's much higher than what it costs to acquire them. And that's what you have to think about. When you move to this model, it's no longer about the math of the moment. It is about that lifetime value. And that's got to go into the calculus as well. And you also have to consider a higher valuation when you're ready to exit from your firm. So that's what the subscription model is. The other key component of it is, and we stole this directly from Walt Disney because it's just such a phenomenal term and an idea, great concept, the idea of plussing. He always wanted to plus the experience with it, what he calls the guest in his parks. He said, we're going to do things that surprise and delight the guests, whether it's fireworks shows or, electrical parades or Christmas parades. A lot of people fought him about that. It's not going to bring any more people to the park. He said, that's not the point. The point is to get them to come back because it costs so much to get them here. If we can get them here and just blow them away, then they'll come back. So he was constantly plussing the experience for the guests in the park and walking around and trying to figure out how to make things better. I just saw something I read, Ed, that said, Sam Walton spent more time in Kmart stores than he did in Walmart stores because he would walk around with a notebook, and just note every little thing probably that they were doing right and wrong that, he wanted to either avoid or duplicate. And Walt was fanatical about the guest relationship. So innovation is baked into the subscription model. You're going to have to constantly have new offerings to offer to your customers. Now, you can still have choices. You can still have 3 options, but it's no longer necessarily tied to the scope of work. It is tied to what you're covering and what you're not covering. So for instance, you may just have a bookkeeping or an accounting option where you just do the historical accounts, and maybe that's all the customer wants. Maybe they have a CPA for the other things, but you may also provide some advisory services. Maybe you're an HR expert. Maybe you can help them with cash flow modeling or budgeting. Maybe you do taxes. Then that could be a second tier. You say, well, you're covered for bookkeeping now and taxes. But folks, once they're covered in that area, they're covered for everything that you're capable of doing in that area. And that's the restriction. You can say no to a customer that asks you to do something that you're not capable of doing. In fact, you have a professional duty to do that. It's called due care. I can't go to a general physician and say, can you perform heart surgery? They're going to say no. And that's the constraint. A general physician is constrained by what they are, that they feel they're capable of doing. And so, but you can still offer options. The point is, over time, you have to continuously plus that offering and add new things. Like if you learn of a new app or a new process, well, then you can slide it into one of your options. And I think over time, what happens is it slides back down to the bottom offering and becomes part of your minimum offering. So it gives you a lot of flexibility with that. And this kind of goes back to something that Michael Hammer said. He's got my favorite definition of what it means to be a professional. It's someone who is responsible for achieving a result rather than performing a task. And I think the billable hour, and even to some extent, I would say value pricing, has made us way too focused on the task, way too focused on the service. What we have to realize is the service is a means to an end. They're not really buying a service. They're buying an outcome. And that's where we want to go next, because I want to introduce you to the revenue model. The revenue model is a question, and it is, what are you asking your customers to pay for? Or what are your customers really paying for? What are they really buying? However you want to phrase it. Fender Guitar is the largest guitar manufacturer in the world, and they started a digital library on instruction on how to play the guitar. And it started at beginner and went all the way up to expert. And when they launched this, they did it because they figured out, the CEO said this, he said something to the effect that if we sell somebody a guitar and they're all excited to play it and they may take lessons, 90% of them drop out after 3 months. They give up because it's just too hard. So the guitar goes under the bed or it goes into the closet. They may even gift it to somebody else, which is another loss for Fender. So they said, we're going to put out this library. People can subscribe to it. I think they launched it in 16. I don't remember the exact date, but they had over 200 and something thousand subscribers to Fender. And of course, that just fed even more guitar sales, because as people got better and got more skilled at playing the guitar, they wanted better guitars. And of course, you trade up and trade up and trade up. And during COVID, they made Fender Play available, especially after the lockdowns. In fact, I think it was right after the lockdowns in April of 2020 or something, when they said, hey, we'll give you a 3-month trial period for Fender. And remember, Ed, they had 1 million people sign up within like a week or something. And it turns out that Fender sold more guitars in 2020 and 2021 than they ever had in their corporate history. And it was because of all those people who signed up and started learning how to play the guitar when they were shut down. So that really makes you think, folks, what is Fender asking customers to pay for? It's not guitars, it's musicianship. And MD Squared was the first concierge medical practice in the United States, started by an MBA, a Seattle Sonic team doctor by the name of Howard Moran. He started it in 1996. And MD Squared was really designed for like CEOs, high net wealth individuals that had, more money than time, but he wanted to make the doctor experience just painless, seamless, convenient. So each one of the MD Squared offices might have a couple doctors in it. Those doctors are limited to 50 patients, to 50 families. So it might, include kids or whatever and spouses. So they only handle 50 families, and then that's it. Their capacity is tapped and they don't take any more. And the concierge movement has spawned a baby cousin movement called the direct primary care physician. And they're kind of doing the same thing, but they're doing it at a lower price point. So think of the MD Squared as the Ritz-Carlton, and think of the direct primary care as like the Hilton Garden Inn or, a Marriott Courtyard or something. It's just a different price point, but it's still, general physician. So MD Squared, you're not in this fee for service mode with your doctor. Because they have fewer patients, they can spend more time with you when you come in. They can do house calls. They'll go to your office. A lot of them dispense pharmacology. A lot of them have diagnostic tools. They have blood labs right there, so they can go through with you your results. You can text them, you can email them, FaceTime them, and get instantaneous feedback almost. And so what are you really paying for? Well, good health. They're not there just to cure you when you're sick or, cure your presenting problem. They're there to keep you healthy. So they want to meet with you more. They want to do proactive things, diet, exercise, whatever it might be. And Ed, we got to meet the bookkeeper at Scaling New Heights, who was there when MD Squared was formed. She set up the chart of accounts, and every time they opened an office, and she told us, she goes, I got a check from a customer, and I kept asking the CFO, where do I code this? Where do I code this check? It was the greatest story in the world. She goes, because I couldn't wrap my head around this model. Because the check is not coded to any service. They're paying for access. And the CFO kept telling her, look, whatever the customer needs, we'll do. If they need a test, if they need, some type of procedure done, it's not tied to a service. It's tied because they're subscribing to us as their doctor. This, I think, for accountants especially, who are just so, they have this fetish about matching revenue and services and coding everything. This is really hard to get their head around, isn't it?
It is, and I think this is my new definition of understanding if you have a new business model, and that is if a professional bookkeeper says to you, how do you code this revenue? Then you've got a new business model.
And another one that I really like is Synsam, which is I think it's in one of the Nordic countries. It's the largest optical chain. So what they did was they brought the subscription model to eyeglasses, contacts, and eye exams. So they have optometrist offices probably all over, and they do glasses and contacts. And everybody told him, because that's a very mature profession, as is bookkeeping and accounting. And everybody told, oh, this will never work. Nobody's going to want to subscribe to their eyeglasses. And they said, no, that's not how we're going to sell it. You know, we're not talking about subscribing to the eye exam and then the glasses. They'll also update all your glasses. You know, if you wore sunglasses or contacts or whatever, everything gets updated. And I believe you can get up to 3 eye exams a year with this. So if you have some type of problem where a doctor orders another eye exam within a year, that's included. So it's just convenient, it's easy, it's frictionless, it saves the customer time. I think it's around $150 a month. And they have 280,000 subscribers after 2 years of bringing this to the market. So what are they asking their customers to pay for? Perfect eyesight. Perfect eyesight. You're not buying the eye exam. You're not trading those dollars for the services and then go trading for the prescription to be filled to, you know, pick out the lenses and the frames and all that kind of stuff. It's all inclusive. It's a coverage idea. It's not tied to a particular service. So I really want you to think about your revenue model. What are you really asking your people to pay for? And right now, it's scope of work. It's, well, how many checking accounts do you have? How many employees do you have? And folks, none of that has to do anything with the outcome of what they're really buying. So figure out what your musicianship is or your good health. And I think our good health, the reason I like the medical analogy so much is because the doctors are there to keep you physically healthy. Well, the accountants, the finance people in your life are there to keep you financially healthy. And so I think our role is just as vital because, you know, clients being healthy, wealthy, and wise is what it's all about. And the doctors contribute to the health, but we keep them wise with their finances. And that's really, really valuable. Next to your health, it's, you know, your greatest asset. So anything to add on that, Ed? Because I love this revenue model question.
Just that as a consumer, I and this is a story that I tell often, is I subscribed what I thought was to a vacuum cleaner, but what it turns out, what I was really subscribing to is clean floors and not having to worry about the floors being swept up. And it's a worry-free situation. And also sausage. I subscribed to sausage, but what really wasn't sausage either. It was Friday nights with a bottle of wine on the back patio with my wife and not having to worry about, do we have something in the fridge that we can bring out as hors d'oeuvres?
I know sometimes we don't even know as a customer what that revenue answer to that question is, right? But we'll learn it over time, like you did with the vacuum cleaner.
Right.
So, meet Dr. Paul Thomas. He is a direct primary care physician. So just to give you an idea, where a concierge doctor like MD squared will cost a family of 4 about $32,000 a year is what they pay. I know it sounds outrageous, but they have incredible pricing power because they're saving these really rich people like CEOs and whatnot. They're saving them time. Well, Dr. Paul works in Detroit, Michigan, and his monthly price is less than $100. It's about $90. Dr. Paul doesn't have 50 families. He maxes out at 550 to 600 patients, and then he'll add another doctor. We've had Dr. Paul on our radio show, The Soul of Enterprise, 4 times. He also wrote a book that I highly recommend, The Startup DPC, which is a fantastic walkthrough of how he did it, how he started up, the challenges he had with the subscription model. He talks openly about his churn rate. He started this practice right out of residency, so he never had a traditional fee for service. That would be our equivalent of hourly billing and even value pricing to some extent, because we're still looking at services and scope of work. And he just went out and started Plum Health, and he was a one-man shop. He didn't even have a secretary or a personal assistant. And he's grown. Since we've known him, he has 3 doctors working for him, and he's about to open up a second office where he plans to put in 2 more doctors. And, you know, it takes them about 1.5 to 2 years to fill a doctor to capacity. That's 600 patients for them. But you can run the numbers, folks. You can do the math as easily as anybody. on what that means. But what he says about it is, this is why I entered the medical profession. I entered this profession to help people, and now I'm living my purpose because I have the capacity to do it. The average physician in the United States has 2,400 patients, and Dr. Paul has 600, which means he can spend more time with you. He can get to know you, your family history, and he can keep you healthy a lot easier. So I think this is really inspiring to get us back to why you entered this profession yourself. So another big question we get, and put a lot of work into this, and we're still working on it. We're on an enormous learning curve with this model, but people say, well, what about one-off projects? What if I take on a client and you have to do a lot of cleanup work, or there's some other project, they're on your subscription, and I don't know, they're involved in a lawsuit, and you have to do a bunch of reports for their attorney, or you get pulled into some project sometimes that are kind of one-offs. Well, there are ways to handle that. One is you could do an upfront price. So let's say you onboard a client or a customer and they have a big cleanup project. You have to do, 2 years worth of bookkeeping that's just a mess, or whatever it is. You could charge an upfront price that's completely distinct and separate from your subscription price. And you could do that. Or you could get the customer to sign up for your subscription and just lock them into a longer term commitment. Now, this is our least favorite because it violates the subscription model. We want the customer to be able to get out at any time. None of us like being locked into anything. I don't like being locked into my cell phone plan. I think that makes the customer experience terrible. I think it diminishes it. So I wouldn't recommend you do a longer term commitment, but we have seen some firms do it. The other thing you can do is you can increase the start price on your subscription and then have it slowly go down month by month so the customer can see it declining and feel like they're getting, even more value as the price declines. And that's a really innovative way to price one-offs. The other thing you can do is you can structure an enterprise choice where it's a customized subscription for that particular customer because maybe they're an outlier. Now, here's the problem we're starting to see with this is if you try and turn every customer into an enterprise choice, that tells us that you're not really focused, you're not really well positioned in the marketplace about what your strategy is, who your ideal customer is. In other words, you're trying to be McDonald's, a high-end steakhouse, and even a vegan restaurant. And that doesn't work too good, does it?
No, not really. If I were a vegan walking into a steak restaurant, I think I'd be pretty disappointed.
So the subscription model really puts a premium on your firm's strategy and purpose. It's much easier, I think, if you're niched. That's not to say you don't have to be that you have to be a niche to be able to do subscription. I think you can be more of a generalist, but I think it's better if you narrow it down to 2 or 3 customer characteristics, whether it's industry or demographic, that you know really well. Because once you know it really well, then the band of exceptions becomes much, much narrower, and you don't have these big outliers. Now, you still may have other projects that come up, and I think another great strategy is, just trust your value. Go ahead and do the cleanup work for the customer, and even right out of the gate. And yeah, sure, they can cancel at any time, but that's the risk you're taking. But you've got to compare that to the lifetime value of that customer. You also have to compare it to, and we haven't mentioned this yet, but one of the big advantages of the subscription model is I think it gives you 2 to 5 times the pricing power of what you're charging now. In other words, if you go to this model, I would expect to see at least a doubling of your pricing. And I think you'll be able to get it a heck of a lot easier than firms that are, trading dollars for services, or worse, trading dollars for hours, because this is a peace of mind model and it's a relationship model. And because it's probably going to demand fewer customers on your part, so you always have capacity to do those one-off things that pop up for the customer. You're going to have to make judgment calls about whether or not you want to do a separate price, or maybe you implement a tip strategy, which I talk about in my books. But there are ways to do this. What we're saying is these one-off projects that people worry about, they always go to the outlier. They're not insoluble. We can figure this out. So we just wanted to share that with you. And the other thing is, I want to give you some resources. If you're interested in this model, we have talked to the 4 leading authors of this model, and they've all written books. One is Subscribe by Teen Zoe, who you've already met. The other is The Automatic Customer by John Warlow. Those are 2 fantastic books. Subscription Marketing by Ann Janzer. Another book that's not up here, unfortunately, is called The Forever Transaction by Robbie Kellman Baxter. So that's The Forever Transaction by Robbie Kellman Baxter. And those are 4 really good thinkers on this model. They have a lot of experience with it. And folks, this model has already been validated. The medical profession has been using it. Concierge doctors are springing up all over. DPC doctors like Dr. Paul, there are over now 1,700 of them throughout the United States. The demand for them is phenomenal. So we expect that to continue to grow and just absolutely flourish. And a lot of doctors, 100% of them say they would never, ever go back to a fee for service type business model. The other thing you can do is that you can subscribe to the Subscription Economy Index, which is at Zora.com. That's Teen Zoe's company. That is a software platform for running subscription businesses. He puts out a weekly newsletter. They put out special reports because they have thousands of customers. They troll them for the data, and then they have built a subscription economy index, which has got some fascinating insights. And then there are 2 reports from Andreessen and Horowitz that you can get. These are the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, and they have issued reports on KPIs for subscription business. It's the KPIs that they look at in order to value a business, how much to invest in and things like that. So, and we're going to talk about that in the second session when we talk about measuring what matters to customers, the KPIs for the subscription business. Ed, anything to add there?
Just quickly, the notion I think that you brought up of strategy must precede pricing is what you were talking about earlier. And I think that's an important point to make. It's strategy precedes pricing. And then also adding in that, hey, listen, especially on that trust your value concept, what it will also do is it will get your customer on board faster, because you don't have to worry about doing 12 different proposals to them, hoping they accept. And look, this is quite frankly something that most bookkeepers and accountants are not very good at, which is the upfront marketing and generation of proposals, all of that stuff. This just says, here's the offering, let's get started. And I think it will significantly increase the velocity with which will bring people on.
You're right. You're making a calculated bet here, folks, when you trust your value. If you have to spend 20, 50 hours, whatever it is, cleaning up somebody's mess, okay, chalk it up to marketing. Chalk it up to marketing expense, acquisition cost, because what would we spend to acquire a customer? What are the hoops that you jump through to acquire a customer? The AICPA tells us it costs 11 times more to acquire a customer than it does to retain one. And therefore, what you're doing by trusting your value is you're saying, I'm going to make this bet, and I'm going to be able to keep this customer for life. And if they stay with you for 1 year, there's a 90% chance you're going to keep them for life. And life in the financial word is about 10 years when you use discounting and all that. But if you can keep them for life, then your annuity is going to be much greater than that initial cost to acquire. So it's a calculated bet. You're going to lose some. Okay, but we're losing now when we don't focus on that relationship and building that lifetime customer base. And so another thing we want to share with you is our radio show. We've done a lot of shows on subscription. We've talked to the 4 authors that we mentioned. We've talked to Dr. Paul Thomas. We've talked to Jody Grunden from Summit CPA, who runs on the subscription model. He does outsourced CFO services, all on subscription. He's the firm that gets paid weekly. And we've talked to a couple lawyers who use subscription. And also Ed and I have done many, many shows on one aspect or just talking about the subscription model, how it differs from value pricing, how it differs from hourly or any other business model that we've seen out there. And you can just go to our homepage, check out show categories, pull down subscription model, and you'll see all the shows pop up. There's probably, what, Ed, two to 3 dozen of them on this.
I'd say that's about right.
And then the last thing, folks, if you want to continue the conversation, you can find me at Ronald Baker on Twitter. I'm also a LinkedIn influencer, so I've got a lot of blog posts up there. You can also email me. I'm happy to take emails from any of you and answer your questions. And of course, the Soul of Enterprise is Ed and I's radio show every week that then drops to podcasts that you can find on all the podcast players. And then we have a special announcement that I'll let Ed do.
Yes, and that's your wonderful co-host here, my co-host, Ron Baker's new book coming out with Paul Dunn, which is called Time's Up. You can get and join the pre-order club for this by going to soulofenterprise.com/Time's Up. What you need to do, purchase the book on Amazon, send us a copy of the receipt, and you'll be enrolled in the program. What that gets you is the Soul of Enterprise with commercial free, without listening to the commercials that play on the regular channel, but then also our bonus episodes that we do each week alongside that. We're also going to have interviews with Ron and Paul during the book launch, as well as do audio chapter summaries. This is not going to be an audio book, but it is going to be talking about the chapter in a little bit more detail that will be only available to those who are on the pre-order club. So hope you'll want to join.
Thanks, Ed, and everybody. Thank you, and we hope you join us for part 2 of this, which is where we talk about KPIs. Ed will join me for that as well. And I hope you're enjoying the Successful Bookkeeper Summit, and have a great day.